What happened to modesty from women wearing headscarves in the UK to women wearing practically nothing now? Let's explore how modest women's fashion has evolved and declined over the years. So if you're non-Muslim watching this and you can see me in a headscarf and an abaya and everything, you're going to think I'm a bit extreme, but hear me out for this video because I think this video is going to inspire you in some kind of way just to learn about our history. And if you're Muslim, then you'll be very interested in this as well. There's this term in psychology that's used, name it to tame it. And this is so accurate with this because I think if we can figure out what's going on behind our decline of modesty, why it's happening, who's funding it, who's fueling it, and is it actually serving us? What do the statistics say? Then I think we can start trying to tame this idea that's really got out of control, where even now we have movements going on like Free the Nipple, where women are marching in the streets with their tops off because they're saying things like men are allowed to not wear their tops, so we should be allowed to not wear our tops as well. And those kind of movements, honestly, before I became Muslim, I completely agreed with. Like before I became Muslim, before I discovered modesty and modesty changed my life, those kind of movements I actually supported. And I used to live in LA. So, I mean, I never paraded in the streets like that. And I think the fact that I didn't should have shown that actually I didn't agree with it. Always felt like, yeah, why if men can do it, why can't women do it? But really that's not the standard that we should be using. Men are not the golden standard that women should be using to encourage how they live their lives. Men and women are very different and we have other desires and wants and needs. We don't need to be like men to be special. I think that's a very valid point. In the UK, modesty was a common standard for centuries, for many, many years. It's changed a lot recently. Let's find out how and why. Let's start with the Victorian era in the UK. See, modesty was not just a cultural or religious practice, it was part of societal norms. Women wore long dresses, high neck blouses, even their swimwear was fully covered. Their fashion emphasized layers and modesty, and they did not show skin. As modesty was always tied closely with femininity, maturity, and respectability. Even the women from working class, they still covered, even though they had jobs where they were working a lot. Even things like not showing ankles, which when I was at school, we used to joke about it all the time. Showing your ankles was seen as immodest. Now look at what we're doing. And even in the early 20th century, when industrialization started happening, the women still dressed modestly and they still wore coverings on their head, headscarves, hats, things to cover their head, despite having laborious type jobs. And in the UK, it was still deeply rooted in Christianity. People were still Christian. And this played a big part in it because Christianity emphasized modesty, virtue, women being humble and virtuous and modest. And women always wore hats and headscarves when they went to the church. And this still happened right up to 20th century. And this remained common until the mid 20th century. Even the secular societies still valued modesty as it was completely woven into the cultural fabric. You know, I found this verse in the Bible that actually says, "But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. It is the same as having her head shaved. For if a woman does not cover her head, she might as well have her hair cut off. But if it is a disgrace for a woman to have her hair cut off or her head shaved, then she should cover her head." So even Christianity emphasized this. And when our country was Christian, when UK was a Christian country, women were dressing modestly. Women were covering their heads. Modesty was tied to family honor and community respect. Jewish women covered their hair too. And even when Muslim women started to come to the UK post World War II, they started bringing hijab with them as well. Now let's look at how the war actually changed women's fashion. So modesty was still a societal standard, but women were entering the workforce in higher numbers. So practicality had to take over a little bit. Things became a little bit shorter and easier to maneuver in. And I get completely why that happened. There was still nothing like we have today, by the way. This is just the first step to women starting to dress a little bit differently. And then obviously with the economy here in the UK, the war economy, there was rationing. So fabrics became a lot less. People couldn't afford as much as they had before. People used to wear less, not just because of the jobs they were doing. Traditionally, women never went into the factories like that in high numbers, what they were doing. The post-war era, 1950s, the economy needed to recover. And consumerism came in, and there was a return of glamour, femininity. Women still dressed modestly, They didn't show skin, but they had more clinch waists and long skirts, things like that. As women started to value their looks again, and there was the media and everything, and women who were in the spotlight really started to drive this change. The leading ladies in the movies and everything like that were started to become icons, fashion icons, and women started to emulate them and the way they dressed and the way they were. In the 1960s, all of this really started to change because there was the sexual revolution, where the pill was introduced, women could have multiple partners and not worry about getting pregnant anymore. And that changed things a lot. There were radical shifts in the way women dressed. The miniskirt was introduced. The women's liberation movement encouraged self-expression, breaking away from societal expectations. And popular film stars like Audrey Hepburn and Brigitte Bardot, they really popularized bold fashion choices that really, really inspired the younger generations. And then during this time, religion really started to decline. People were not really Christian anymore. And secularization actually brought the idea that modesty was restrictive and outdated. And that's still the value that we have today. And the young women started to rebel against what their parents did, and they started to use clothing as a form of protest. And even things like more masculine fashion came in during this time as well. It was all celebrated under this movement of body positivity, which is something that we still see a lot today. So I'm sure you guys can relate to that. The feminism movement, which fueled a lot of this, which were really, there were positive and negatives with everything, but a lot of the negatives that come from the feminism movement is built on the way it encouraged women to wear less in order to be more free, which is something that's really ingrained into us as people that live in the West, as a woman that lives in the West. It's so deeply ingrained, it's so hard to get out of your mind, but it's really could not be further from the truth. I don't know why women feel the need to show their bodies in order to feel free. I feel so much more free when I dress like this and walk in the streets, not worried about men looking at me, trying to get as much attention as possible. SubhanAllah, I can be valued for different things now. I'm valued for things like my mind over my body, which is something that brings so much more happiness and peace into my life. There was this interview with filmmaker Anthony Russo, and there are a few other people that spoke about this as well, where they come out and they said that the Rockefellers funded the feminism movement. And the reason why they funded it was not out of some desire to help women. It was actually because they realized that half of the population was not taxable. Women were not working, and they wanted to tax more people, make more money. So they encouraged women to work so that they could tax more people, and they encouraged women to work so they would send their kids into institutions that could be controlled by the government. And this made so much sense. Like, this is something that's obviously really ingrained into our society, so people hearing this can feel really sensitive to hearing this, but not everything is black and white, right? I do believe in the women to have a choice whether they want to work or not, but I can also see how these mega, mega, mega rich people will be benefiting off these movements that encourage women to put their kids into institutions they can be controlled by governments, these movements that encourage women to go to work so they can be taxed and also pay bills. Now we live in a society where the man and the woman has to work in order to be able to pay the bills. It's really difficult unless you earn really good money to pay the bills as a man by yourself. A movement that encourages more gender fluidity so that marketing can market to both men and women instead of just men or women. A society that values consumerism, fast fashion, women wearing clothes for like one day and then throwing them away. This all benefits the super rich, the mega rich. Something else that benefits the mega rich is the hypersexualization in movies, in music, and all this kind of stuff. It benefits them because sex sells. Sex sells. And they make a lot of money from these movies, these music videos, insane amounts of money that people should not be making from just showing naked women and encouraging women to be naked. Let's move on to modern day. Revealing fashion is now the norm. Women wear tiny clothes, crop tops, mini skirts, gym clothes, which are very revealing, sheer materials, and it's not only normalized, it's actually celebrated. And when I say women, this is something that's really important. When I say women, I'm not just talking about women, I'm talking about girls as well. Teenage girls, girls that are underage, girls that have not reached puberty yet as well. High profile fashion brands and influencers encourage women to show their bodies, not to cover it. And then obviously social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, they heavily influence these fashion trends, and the algorithms are built to glorify the women that are wearing less clothes. And then obviously music videos, reality TV, films, all of it, which is so ingrained in our society, is encouraging women to dress like this as well. And advertisements frequently use hypersexualized images in order to sell their products. And this is why I'm so worried about the younger generation, because I actually didn't grow up with social media. Social media, Facebook was actually introduced when I was maybe 13, 14. And though I did have it, it wasn't anything like Instagram and TikTok and, the things that the young girls are having today, where the pressure to fit in is huge. And the girls that I know today who are young teenagers, who are like 11, 12, 13, even younger sometimes, what they are seeing online is genuinely very concerning and very scary. TikTok has created an environment where trends spread rapidly, and it pressurizes young people to conform to these styles, to feel accepted or to feel admired, styles that they wouldn't necessarily use. And editing apps and things like that are setting, like things like Snapchat, are setting unrealistic beauty standards, making individuals feel compelled to show their bodies just to feel some kind of validation. And social media thrives on visual appeal, encouraging women to wear outlandish things, revealing things to get noticed by the algorithm. Here are some of the consequences of those shifts. Number one is body image issues. It has made a lot of struggles for young women. Oh my God, subhanAllah. There is one form that is seen over and over again in celebrity culture online. Women are seeing it constantly in their brains, constantly through advertisements, everything. This one form. And if they don't fit that form, it's very unlikely that they do fit it because it's very unattainable. If they don't fit that form, that body form, women can feel so much hate towards themselves. They can do things like self-harm, bulimia, eating disorders. These are all things that I faced in my childhood. And even women that do fit that body image, the perfect body image, they still think they don't. This is just the way women are, right? We're constantly like, we don't think we're good enough. And marketing and billion-dollar industries spend so much money telling us we're not good enough, because if we think we're good enough, we're not going to be buying their product. The whole world is designed to make us feel like we're not good enough. This makes me so emotional because I faced all of this stuff as a kid. I faced all of this stuff, and I see it happening with the younger generation so much. It's getting worse and worse and worse. Kids are committing suicide, they're harming themselves, they're having eating disorders, and this is not rare. This is the norm here in the UK. The hypersexualization of women, it's encouraging women younger and younger and younger to lose their virginity, to be engaging in things that are harmful to them. Sexual harassment, sexual violence, it's all increasing, it's all getting worse. And we're losing our privacy and dignity. We're losing our dignity, and that affects our self-image. That affects the way we view ourselves. That makes us feel we're not as lovable. We don't deserve to be loved, to be treated nicely. Lots and lots of things are thriving in society that prove that, from not just the way women are treated in, sorry to say this, but the porn industry. Inshallah, as Muslims, we do not engage in this kind of stuff at all, but I'm just putting it out there for people who are maybe non-Muslim or people who are struggling with their religion. Porn is completely dehumanizing women. If you look at the statistics of what is happening to women in porn, a lot of it is very violent and disturbing, and that is the norm. And all of this has an impact on us as Muslims as well. Yes, we choose to dress modestly. We believe that it brings women a lot of dignity and value and allows them to be more free. I do not dress like this for a man. I don't even have a man. Like, this is the way that I dress, and I like that. We feel misunderstood. We are judged because we wear hijab, even though it was part of this culture a while ago. Inshallah, hopefully we can move more towards being more modest, inshallah. I pray that's true. And I think it will help a lot of the problems that we're having in society now, inshallah. Thank you guys for watching. Assalamu alaikum.